Now, this session is expected to focus on alternative energy pathway for the future. There are many people who in this room who also have been working on that area. One of the reasons why organizers asked me to say a few things about is I have been focusing on the alternative power supply options for the country as a whole. One of my book on integrated power policy was published by CNDP in 2012. Now, subsequently, after looking at the power supply option for the country as an integrated power policy, what we learned was it didn't carry much conviction with the power policy experts. In spite of the efforts by many people like Lalita and others, it did not carry a lot of influence at the national level. So subsequently, we thought that why don't you look at one particular state and look at its options and come up whether we can go, how we can move from year 2015 to 2050, keeping all social, environmental and economic perspective in proper focus. So keeping that in view, I did for about 1 year, I studied the Tamil Nadu situation because a few gentlemen from Tamil Nadu requested me and they offered me some help also. That book also is more or less ready, the draft is ready. What I would like to do, present before you is, what are the issues we considered there? Because I personally believe, because of my experience behind me of 30 years, though we have not looked at the specific numbers there, how much of renewable energy, how much of coal, nuclear, or how much sub-branches of renewable energy should be available by 2050, or exactly how a distributed network or the transmission network generation should be there. The focus is not on the exact numbers. The focus was the approach, what we should go from here to 2050 so that it is able to meet the legitimate energy requirement of all sections of the society on a sustainable basis at a reasonable and acceptable cost. I stress on the word legitimate energy demand because all our energy requirements are not requirement. What we are demanding cannot be termed as legitimate. So that is the first thing. So legitimate energy demand for all sections of the society and equitable and environmentally friendly options. And the same technology or the options should be available for next at least 10-15 generations. What we are doing today is not available even probably for the next generation. So those are the issues which were kept in the larger perspective. I initially in that book we have looked at some overarching principles. Now energy security, by relying on import of energy material like coal or petroleum products, as you know, we are importing around 80%. Same thing in last few years we have also started importing coal. These two indicate, and same thing with nuclear technology also. The Government of India, the integrated energy policy of 2006 say that the uranium fuel available in the country can support only 10,000 megawatt of nuclear power. But countries' pipe dream is to go for around 250,000 megawatt of nuclear power alone by 2050, which means 95% of the total installed capacity of nuclear power has to come from outside. So these three have a connotation from the energy security also. We are aware of what is happening in other parts of the world when a particular country depends on imported source. Same thing applicable to Tamil Nadu also. It is ideal that Tamil Nadu harnesses the resources available within its border so that it can meet sustainably at lowest cost without impacting its energy security. That is one of the issues we consider that. What we looked at was the geographical and climatic conditions of Tamil Nadu as a whole. What are the areas, what are the constraints there? Tamil Nadu has a lot of it's a strength also, being a very traditionally run country in many of the rural areas. It also has constraints. Constraint is that it is not having any coal reserve of its own. It has some lignite. Lignite is considered to be a very poor quality of coal. Now hydro, they have almost ran out of hydro. Now coal, we have come to an understanding that coal is not going to be the future. The nuclear, Tamil Nadu already has 2 nuclear power plants, though second nuclear power plant at Kudamkulam is having a lot of problems. We all personally wish that it won't go forward. It stops there as soon as possible. So keeping that in view, what is the option for Tamil Nadu? The option for Tamil Nadu starts from what the system we have. The system what we have here is throughout the country is one of the most inefficient power transmission, distribution and utilization system in the whole world, one of the worst you can say. My own studies say if we take our efficiency, generation, transmission, distribution and utilization to the international best practice level, not only international best practice level, but in some of the segments our own country has some very high efficiency standard. For example, cement industry in the country has the least energy consumption per unit of cement produced anywhere else in the world. So there are some very good examples here. If we take all those things to the international best practice level, my own calculations say at the national level we will be surplus by nearly 30 to 40% of electricity right now. So bad is our efficiency. So applying to the same thing to the Tamil Nadu, what we found out is Tamil Nadu is certainly in a better position as far as transmission distribution is concerned as compared to other parts of the country. The transmission distribution loss is 22%. But let us remember the international best practice is below 5%. If it is brought down from 22% to say 5%, the existing system alone can give virtually about 17% more. And Tamil Nadu's shortage is only around 8% or 9% from last few years, which means there is absolutely no shortage there. So all sections in society can be given an acceptable quality and reliable quality of electricity even with the existing supply. So our first priority is to make how the existing system to the international best practice level. It is possible, it's been done. Our thermal plant load factors are very low. When I say plant load factor, it is a measure of how much it is utilized. It's very low plant load. Some of the thermal power plants in Tamil Nadu are old. So the same thing with transmission distribution losses. And another area is utilization of electricity also is leaving much to be desired in the whole country. Same thing with the Tamil Nadu. Now when we talk about, when we all have been raising a lot of issues here. We can't do this with solar, we can't do this with, this is economically very costly, this is not equitable. Our questions have to be to address what not if we don't look at the alternative. Can we do with the present business as usual scenario? That's impossible. We don't have coal is running out. Even at the national level, they say so much of coal is there, but at the present level of economically extractable coal can last not more than 30-35 years. This was stated by Planning Commission way back in 2006, and we are opening large number of coal mines, so it can get exhausted even before that. And most of our hydro reservoirs mostly efficiently, other than Himalayan rivers, have already been developed, harnessed, and we have huge problems even with those Himalayan rivers and all that. So same thing with nuclear. So these three conventional power projects, technologies, we don't have much of future there. So what do we do? So obviously we have to look at a different option. Am I talking too fast? I'm trying to cover as much as possible in 20 minutes. So the question here is, we have to find a alternative to what we have. What we have here is a centralized grid where large scale power projects are connected to the grid, and that grid, somebody sitting in Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta will decide a village will get electricity or not, or when, how much and all that, and even the voltage. So we have to see that this has, as a matter of fact, this is also happening across the world. Across the world also people are looking at now different alternative, because they found that this present grid-based system is costing too much to the society in various forms, even in financial terms also it's costing, and there are many. For example, one of the example is I'm extremely happy to read about the Energy Vende. Is it pronounced as Energy Vende, Alex?
No,
sorry. Yeah. Okay.
But it's Axel, nonetheless.
I know you are not going to be answering me. So that's a very very interesting subject. So I think that is if you have not read that, kindly read that company's record. It's even. The reason why I'm focusing on that is Germany being a very energy efficient, technologically very developed country also. As a part of that energy event, they have made two things very clear. Energy efficiency and conservation are still considered to be the primary planks of their future energy plan. So I don't think we can really move it. That's why efficiency has become such an issue. Now, environmental and social issues also, because why electricity is needed is only for the development of the society. If we don't consider social and environmental issues in proper perspective, what is the use of having energy at a huge cost to the society? And most importantly, in all our discussions in the morning, we haven't touched the climate change. Climate change is such an issue where it is not leaving us any other option other than looking at thoroughly reviewing it and looking at an environmentally sustainable option. And none of these conventional problems, many people think that hydro is new or it's very clean. It is not clean. If you look at a lot of details, I don't go into details. It has huge implications. Same thing with coal, and we know about nuclear. So obviously we come to the renewable energy. The question is how much of renewable energy? There is a question, it was a very valid question in the morning. What about solar? Why do we talk about solar? The physicists all over the world, recently there is a paper, they say, hypothetically speaking, if we move to only renewable energy sources by 2050, at that rate, compare starting from say 1900, where the energy consumption of the globe is increasing around 1% or less than 1%. If we continue at the same level, in another 400 years, we will cook ourselves. The temperature from the reflected glass of solar, so many energy wind turbines being made and all that. So there is an inevitable consideration for us to reduce our demand to the minimum extent possible. I don't think we can escape from that, whether even if it is from renewable energy. Our priority should be to reduce the consumption. This has been mentioned in IPCC reports also and various other forms of that. Unfortunately, what's happening in these climate change conditions and discussions, the Western world is not talking about reducing their energy consumption, but they are trying to find different technological means where they can meet all their energy needs. So I don't think that will be applicable to Indian conditions if all the Indian population is supposed to reach about 1.5 billion by 2030. If all of us have to go to that level of even the international average of per capita consumption of 3,000 kilowatt hours, I don't think we can meet that. So the fundamental thing is we have to have a change in life. This has been also recognized all over the world. The renewable energy cannot meet our demand unless we change our behavior pattern, lifestyle energy is changed. So those are the primary considerations we kept in the background. Now the question is, what is the demand for Tamil Nadu by 2050? There have been many econometric models and all that, all of them based on high GDP growth model or energy consumption at the consumer level model and all that. They did not look at the nature's constraints. Nature cannot support us any amount of energy what we need. So it has to be a different paradigm altogether. So we looked at what should be the demand projection for 2050. We worked out on a few issues. The stress has been to encourage all sections of the society, including policymakers, to reduce our energy demand. That I don't think that can be compromised at all. The question here is, we cannot be very prescriptive as to how much an individual should consume and all that. We all have to make a decision. Just our own personal example, I believe my own electricity consumption must be one of the lowest in the country, coming from my social and economic background. My electricity consumption for 2 successive months was only 28 units. Now, last 1 month, Karnataka state government has started to encourage more of LED. I purchased I had already CFLs running a few LEDs. I purchased a few LEDs and replaced CFLs. And my energy consumption came down to 19 units. 19 units. Of course, it cannot be applicable in Delhi where it's quite hot. But what I'm trying to say is it's possible to bring down. Even 30 units per month of the Lifeline Energy Planning Commission say, even most of the villages, they find it's not required, that much of energy is not required. So I'm trying to focus here that we have to change our approach in order to meet our energy demand of all sections of the society. Rightly, one gentleman who was talking about tribals and all that, it's true. Unless we change our own model here in the urban areas, I don't think we will be able to give energy to the tribals also, or tribal poor. So that's another thing. So demand and supply scenarios were discussed in detail. What are all the various technology options here? I have to stress here that no single technological option may be suitable to all villages, even within a state. It depends on their locally available resources. For example, a particular a coastal village in Tamil Nadu have to look at how to harness ocean energy. Ocean energy is something we haven't done that. We have a huge coastline of 6,000 kilometers, and ocean energy is a huge potential sitting there to be tapped. I know few people who have already done some modeling there. Unfortunately, government is not looking into that. And deep inside the Western Ghats belt and all that, Tamil Nadu may have a lot of biomass energy, the forest produce, so bioenergy may be an issue. And Tamil Nadu as a whole has a good potential with solar, and every household and every school, industry, office should consider putting a rooftop. Taking all these issues into consider, I projected a model by 2050. It has to move slowly. It has to develop organically from 2015 to 2050. We find that Tamil Nadu need not have any coal power plants. It can safely shut down the existing nuclear power plants and meet all its electricity needs through the three basic sources like solar, wind, for your information, Tamil Nadu already is in the forefront of harnessing wind, but they are facing some problem because the infrastructure that needs to evacuate the power is not being developed well. So keeping that in view, solar, biomass and micro hydro, they have quite a few hydropower stations that they may continue, because hydropower plants have the longest lifeline among all the conventional projects. They can go for 150 years. One power station in Karnataka has been functioning satisfactorily for 110 years. So keeping that in view, and also the potential to develop ocean energy. If we do that, I am fairly convinced, because of my 35 years experience in the power sector, that energy demand of Tamil Nadu can be met. And WISE is a company which they did modeling of Tamil Nadu system. They have come to the similar conclusion that it's called as aggressive penetration. Aggressive penetration of RE into Tamil Nadu grid is entirely feasible, it's economically viable, and it will be in the long range beneficial to the community. This is some of the issues what we came to know. Now, what sort of distribution system we have? We talk about transmission distribution system. If you look at, we say T&D losses are high. If you look at the two subgroups of transmission distribution, losses is more on the distribution side, not less on the transmission side. So we have to worry on the transmission side. The transmission side is problem is that we have long lengths of LT line running from transformers downwards. But the better option here is to have longer length of HT lines, that is 11 kV line, and place transformers as close to the consumer's premises as possible. That will bring down the losses. So that was taken into account. When we are looking at renewable energy, again my concern is Government of India, in their eagerness to reach that 175,000 megawatt of RE capacity by 2022, they are going from very large wind parks and also solar parks, 4,000 megawatt in one area. And in many of these states, they are going for 500 megawatts. They are competing with each other to say that our solar power park will be the biggest park in the world. But it has huge social and environmental implications. We are not taking that into account. This 4,000 megawatt park they have chosen in Rajasthan is on the bank of a lake. They have a huge concern, environmentalists there, they are worried about that. So that again is not an issue. So what else? The issue here is we must go for as much of distributed energy sources as possible. That's why what we have been discussing since morning is a very sweet news for me, but it has to be pushed to the extreme limit. Hypothetically, scientists and engineers who have been working on this, they think ideally we should produce our own energy of rooftop or biomass or kitchen waste. You seem to be doing some of them. So that is the ultimate goal. Now you imagine you have a energy, for example, you have a fairly large house, say approximately 100 square feet of rooftop corresponds to 1 kilowatt. So most of the houses we have 500, 600 square feet of the rooftop. Most of the houses can generate more electricity than we won't require. If we connect to the grid, what happens? The electricity produced in my house will not go to other part of the country. It will go to my neighbor. So that will reduce the distribution losses. Yeah, that's fine. So that will reduce the losses to a huge level, and it gives power to the individual owners. So I have a feeling that as a group we should, by the end of the session, we should come up with a paper, or at least at the overarching paper. What should be the priority? What are the issues? We will look at that. So distributed energy sources, most of the houses, if houses are not able to fund the money, why not the government, instead of putting so much of money in nuclear power plant or coal, why can't they put say rooftop solar panels on schools, village panchayat offices, government offices? They are not even managing their own energy supply through rooftop, which has a huge potential. Greenpeace did a very good study of what's possible in Delhi. That should be applicable to all cities. If cities can manage their own renewable energy sources and meet their electricity demand, I think 50% of our problem will be solved. That much of saved energy can be sent to villages even with the present system. It's quite possible. So we have to go in that way. Another issue we have missed here, probably I'm participating in such discussion for last 12 years. For some reason, I am not finding favor with the particular issue of cost and benefit analysis and options analysis. These two are the issues which have been looked very seriously all over the world, and as a society we have miserably failed to look into that. How can we say that a particular renewable energy, even if it is solar, per a house is the best? There may be a better option like a biomass. There may be another biomass. There may be even a small hydropower source behind that house. In most of the Western Ghat areas and Eastern Ghat hills and Himalayas, there are many streams flowing very close to your house. Have you ever considered that cost and benefits? And another problem here is when you look at cost and benefits, a developer considers cost to himself and benefits to himself. He will never take the cost to the society. And one corollary of that is options analysis. For any given option, whether it is electricity or house building or any other option, there are always different options. Are we considering all options? We are not considering any options. Just because I have money, I will put up a coal power plant. Just because there is a water drop, we will put up a hydropower plant. Who says it is the most economical option to do that? So we need to look at that. Another area we looked at is microgrid and smart grid. We talked about microgrid. There is an extension of that is smart grid. We talked about demand side management. There was a complaint that we only look at demand side and not the supply side. Now demand side is very important there because demand really creates how much supply can be given and all that. Now in order to manage that minutely to the level what we require, we need to the next level of technological innovation where these microgrids are fitted with advanced ICT, information and communication technology with protection. That is logically that's going to happen. In Germany, there are around 803 energy cooperatives working at village levels. They are almost independent of the grid, but sometimes they are connected to the grid and surplus energy is fed back to the grid. So this is an area, this is largely a network what I was thinking of. Another issue, serious concern is...
What is Germany thing?
In Germany, there are around 803 energy cooperatives operating at village level. Most of them are powered by renewable energy sources and they are independent almost of the grid. So that's a very good example for us. If an advanced society like Germany, which require very high level of energy, if they can go for microgrid, why not our villages which require much less energy? That's one issue. The last one here is the public consultation. It was mentioned in the morning.
We have some silence, please.
This public consultation now it is being only used as a sort of legal issue just for the sake of where it's the environmental impact assessment. Why don't we have public consultation on all issues? I think Ramapati mentioned very clearly. The first thing they did was to have effective consultations with the villagers. What type of energy they require, why and all. That is terribly important. I believe that's one of the reasons why they succeeded. That's not happening. Another issue here is the government and the agencies keep on saying public won't know anything. There are a lot of experts. A chief engineer from Power Grid Corporation of India, NTPC, he retires tomorrow. Immediately he becomes an ignorant man, is he? There is so much of knowledge in the society. Why they were never involved in discussions? See, there is so much of knowledge here. We were never consulted. So those are another issue here. I think as a group here, we must persuade the government to consider these issues. And I would request that the model what we have done for Tamil Nadu, I can't say it is complete. Probably with your feedback it can be improved upon. My request is let us try to do similar modeling for all other states in the union, and from there let us come out with a larger model for the country as a whole. Until we do that, the government keeps saying that. For example, Ramapati said how Bihar Chief Minister was influenced by his model. So we need to do that same thing happening at Tamil Nadu, that Madam Jayalalitha is not convinced there is an option, anything else. So we have to give them an option. That's how this Tamil Nadu pilot project was done. Basically, I think I will stop my blabbering there. I think we can go to the discussions, please.
There is a real challenge, I would say, in this. One is there is difference between per capita electricity consumption versus personal consumption. When we say per capita, whole of the nations or countries' energy consumption is divided by the population, what's it? We get per capita. But this includes the energy that goes into industries and things, many other activities. But when we say personal consumptions, that is what we use at home. Okay, but as Axel pointed out some time earlier in the discussion, the personal consumption of the population is around 20%, or it's not really major pie. Okay, so if we really want to reduce our electricity consumption, then I would say the challenge is still higher. One is alternating our lifestyle habits, reducing this itself is a challenge. But apart from that, I think if we want to reduce our electricity consumption, country as a whole, then the whole strategy has to be different. Say for example, I say reduce electricity consumption, then I think as a country to produce cars, then it will not go together.
Sorry, I forgot about that. In my discussion on demand side management and demand projection, this has been very heavily discussed. The high GDP growth rate paradigm what we have is leading to all these problems. We can't really continue with this because you are exactly correct. Our personal level consumption, most villages is probably per capita consumption is less than 25-30 in villages. Okay, so even in towns also it's not huge. So per capita consumption, why it was raised is basically the government keeps saying that we have to reach at least the world average level, which is around 3,000, which will become a disastrous thing. I agree with you. So it requires a complete paradigm. What sort of economy requires? Shall we go for, there are the Tamil Nadu State Action Plan on Climate Change mentions a very important issue. They say 1% increase in agricultural production is equivalent to 4% of investment in all other sectors. So that shows very clearly where our priority should be: agriculture, horticulture, forestry based, animal husbandry, services based, and all that. I personally am not very happy with the way a lot of industrial production is going and all that. So that's where we have to take a decision. That's why we very clearly mentioned we require a paradigm shift, and energy issue cannot be addressed satisfactorily unless we address all other issues: equity, the sustainability, climate change, what's going to happen to the future generations. I agree with you.
Using 2005 as a base year and try to develop 3 long-term scenarios using very much of a bottom-up approach rather than, ask the question how much power do we need, ask the question how do our needs develop, what sorts of worlds do we want to live in by 2050. And so one was called sort of a business as usual, the other was policy as usual. Sort of where we have a high renewable penetration, high efficiency, we're really trying to reduce emissions, and we actually had a very ambitious target. We said by 2030 we'll have the same greenhouse gas emissions as 2005, using all these approaches. But the third strategy was what we call some kind of deep change. I forget the actual term that was used to describe that scenario, but effectively saying that we're really going to have deep structural changes in the economy, changes in society, changes in lifestyle to some extent, but also make sure that there's complete access to electricity and cooking energy by 2022 or so 2020, 2022. And then see whether we actually achieve the same greenhouse gas target. So what does that mean in terms of the structural changes needed? So that was a kind of a very much of a normative scenario. And what we found was, and we went through this question, how do we actually make sure that lifestyle changes take place at the household level? We encountered this sort of problem, that household energy is actually still a small fraction of total energy. So we need to make large changes in the way we live, we build houses and move around and so on. And there we found, to a bit of a surprise, that the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak, comes from cement and iron and steel. And that led us to ask the question, what does that mean in terms of how we build cities, housing, and so on? And there we were at a loss because we don't have the skills to sort of imagine all that. We tried to sort of have a few stakeholder consultations and all that. Prayas was a great help in many of those discussions. But what we proposed was, well, let's just simply assume that the rate of growth of iron and steel and of cement would actually decline dramatically because we're moving to alternative forms of construction, thinking about different types of cities and so on. So I think really the visioning for energy, as you rightly put, can't come from the energy sector alone.
The planners say at the national level, by the number of buildings what we are likely to see by 2050, not even 30% of them in India are built. So, but there must be around 3 times more buildings than what we have now. The question, as you said correctly, where are we going to get steel, cement, and other building material unless we have to have a change?
And
If we have to have
traffic
that,
jams.
yeah, that's there. So if you have to have that cement, cement is a very energy intensive industry, same thing with, but my question here is, do we have raw material to make so much of cement or steel, because we are exporting iron ore also overseas. So that's why we entirely agree with you. Thank you for raising that matter. We require a complete paradigm. I think we wanted to do this last 10 years ago. We have to do that. It's overdue. Another point about the per capita consumption, we did little vote analysis. Exactly what Mr. Vachan said, and he said, I did a survey of just my village and few places. In most of the houses, their per capita consumption is not, my own per capita consumption in that village was around 120 per person per year. And most of the villages is much less because they don't get electricity at all. The question here is, subsequently we did analysis how much of electricity may be needed in a typical household in town and all that. My own calculations say around 800 units per person per year should be enough to meet per capita consumption of households. Not even that, I think it's around 400. The remaining between 400 to 1000, which is the per capita consumption now, should be able to cover all other areas, because we have to consider our own industrial development. Industrial development in the country is not bad. Economic development also is not bad. Only people are poor because of maldistribution of the resources. Our industrial and economic development is fairly good. The question here is, keeping that in view, can you find a different model of development where the poor people, villagers have access to these resources, and we find a different paradigm, development paradigm where my sustainable growth can be possible. Only through that, I think we will be able to meet our energy requirement even by 2030 or 40. Even 175,000 megawatts, by the way these people are planning, without a very clear accountability, without an action plan, I will be surprised if we go there. But even that will not be sufficient, because our own energy needs are so high. They are expecting our population to reach 1.7 billion by 2050.
Do a panchayat planning for one in Kerala, and we found that this panchayat wanted something like 7 megawatts, and the potential was 11 megawatts.
One village to try.
Yeah, it's actually a big one. Actually, 30,000 population. Yeah, it says 30,000 population. So our villages are not villages, these are small towns, So and it's completely electrified, and so planning means the panchayat, panchayat planning was there for last 20 years, So that's why we went there, and there was this MLA who welcomed us, this panchayat which welcomed us, and So a survey was done actually with these 4 schools and 2 colleges that were there, and we did a complete survey which I can explain later, how we did that. There's very interesting observations where we found that it's not only supply enhancement by solar, but can we kind of make the demand management also. So every household we try to look at the equipments also, what is being done, and that's where we found this, this is possibilities there. We had some financial calculations, we had some kind of banks and local cooperative societies all ready for this, and then we had this surprise that in the peak load, we purchased power for 12 rupees and it's supplied for 6 rupees. So average there is a 50% subsidy by the KSEB. So KSEB was our partner in this, and then they said that this is not a viable option, and for them actually this peak load has to be minimized. So then there somebody came out with a peak load minimizer where this 4 hours of peak load can be stored using solar, and that makes it viable. So we again did in Trivandrum City 1 ward where this peak load minimizer and this was used, this energy saving equipments were used, and then we found that it's a kind of viable model. Now they have actually done it done the study for 1 district, Malappuram. So we don't know what will happen, but I think our starting point was this. The individual household is too small a unit to kind of do some kind of a substantive change, but state and nations are kind of very macro, entities to kind of do that. So we thought, in Kerala, panchayat was a kind of viable unit because it was large enough. There was a governance system, and then there were educational institutions is because students have to be the kind of tomorrow's citizen.
But I agree with you. Not all households can afford to do that. So why don't we go for schools, village panchayats, offices, government offices? They say parliament building in Pakistan is the first one to run on its own energy. But why not our own parliament, or why not our own legislative assemblies? So that's one of the issues.
What's your strategy? What do you want to do with this?
I am completely banking on Vijay Kumar and Sundaraj here, our friends from Tamil Nadu, to put it on in the form of a booklet and take it to the government of Tamil Nadu, that we have a model here which say that the legitimate demand for electricity of Tamil Nadu by 2050 can be met by non-conventional sources and with a different paradigm, which can also lead to economic development and equitable source of energy to all sources. That's what we will try. At the same time, using that as a sort of model, we are urging other NGOs, other state governments and friends like you and civil society organizations to come up with similar studies. And I will be more than happy to assist any of the state NGOs to do similar studies in their state also, provided there is some assistance from the locals. So through that, if we have some similar model for say around 25-30 large states from different climatic and geographic regions, on the basis of that we can extrapolate to the national level what sort of energy. I have tried to do that in my earlier study, but with this it will be much more stronger. Unless we have a very clear documentation in our hand, as Lalitha ji said, it's very difficult for us to go and argue our case. It's impossible because people won't listen to us. But if you have imagine all these NGOs come together and come up with a very credible study that energy requirement of India can be met on a sustainable basis without going for any conventional practices, then government has to sit up and listen. That's how other countries are moving, especially in USA. They have done that. Professor Jacobson of Stanford University has done a number of studies like that, and you will be surprised. He was requested to come and depose before the Congress in November, and he has made a very forceful presentation to them.
But I mean, I think one of the reasons why, of course, a lot of these haven't, there are many reasons. One of the reasons why these scenarios are difficult to take forward, haven't gone too much further. One is, of course, most of us are not aware of them. So I think we need a forum or forums in which we become much more aware of these scenarios that you people have worked on, and that you also are able to produce them, or we help you to produce them in more popular ways so that they're accessible to much more of the population in many different languages. One is that. But the other is, I think that we also need some shock tactics. And I think shock tactics are what people's movements deliver. And that's why I'm glad you ended up this thing saying that you're dependent also on Uday Kumar and Sundarajan and all, because it's the people's movements who actually make everybody sit up. So I think what has been missing, as far as I know, and others might correct me if I'm wrong, is to say that the people's movements have been actually extremely good at resistance and stopping or trying to stop destructive development. Maybe they haven't had enough access to saying, okay, here we don't want Kudam Kulam, but here's a complete scenario for what Tamil Nadu could do, yeah, which is what you're providing. You have this, you don't necessarily have access to 5,000 people sitting on the streets and demanding something like that. So I think this process of, whether it's Vikalp Sangam or anything else, of actually getting this kind of people power, brain power, and I'm not saying people and brain is different, all together, including indigenous knowledge and local knowledge and so on. I mean, that's, to my mind, the only way that we're going to be able to push these scenarios into becoming powerful enough for somebody to be listening to it. And if somebody is still not listening, then of course we still have the people power to continue resisting, and the people power to show that it's possible on the ground. A number of the initiatives that we've heard through today.
With each passing day without finding an alternative, we are creating a huge problem for our future generation. For example, large coal power plants, for example, Priya or Vinuta can talk to you about those issues for days and together. These coal power plants, where are these coal? All coal are is below thick forests. If you want to have coal mines, we have to destroy that. And National Forest Policy of 1985 say, in order to have a clean environment, we should the land area of the country should be covered at least with 33% of forest and trees, and that percentage is less than 20 now. And how can we expect that to ever reach 33% if we continue to destroy these forests? And all these large projects have another connotation. They require huge transmission lines. We came across such a huge transmission line request from Mysore to Kozhikode through Western Ghats, and they have felled around 50,000 trees. They didn't have any problem there. People fought there. And my own study says that a line was absolutely not required. Nobody answered our questions. So I think we have to come up with an alternative to meet our energy needs in entirely different fashion than from the centralized. It's a huge, somebody was talking about energy water nexus. There's a huge energy water nexus. Lot of energy requires, when you consume energy, it requires a lot of energy, water. And water consumption in large quantities require energy. So that's why we have to emphasize that we require entirely different paradigm. There is absolutely no chance. A state like Karnataka is one of the most water-stressed state in the country, and without any shame, the government there is going for coal power plants. We don't have coal reserve, we don't have water. They are going for large coal power plants. It's happening in all parts of the country. Kerala has no coal power. They wanted the coal reserve, they wanted to go for coal power. And even Himachal, there was a proposal for coal power plant in Himachal Pradesh.
But part of this also has to build the alternative scenarios in each sector. Because if they say, yeah, that's fine for this particular sector, energy, but for agriculture we still need X number of gigawatts for pump sets, etc. And we can say, well, here's an alternative scenario for agriculture in future, which is a sustainable agriculture, which doesn't need that kind of gigawatt power and doesn't need pesticides.
It doesn't need any
So I
power
think-
at all.
India, we are already 500.